Hi guys, welcome to Patcher, and in this video I'm going to discuss PHP 8 features. So PHP 8 was released last year in November, and because it was a major version, so it has some breaking changes and lots of features. So in this video I am going to discuss only features. Okay, so let's start with the GIT compiler, and also uh, I will not go into the depth but only overview. So you can just uh, take the overview from here and go into the depth later and different videos. Okay, so let's start with the GIT compiler. If you if you see this flowchart and just forget that for the time being the GIT part, so you can see the uh, request with the op cache processing. It was using PHP using it before the PHP 8. Okay, so it checks the op cache, and if the request was cached, and then it goes directly for the compilation, and the compiler or you can say virtual machine uh, convert the code into the machine code, then the code goes for the execution. Okay, but now in the PHP 8 the GIT added the extra layer of caching, and this cache actually store the machine code, native machine code, which can run directly. Okay, so whenever the request comes, and if a GIT has handled it before, then GIT directly take this request to the execution. Okay, so you can say that it improves some performance level of PHP, not much but just. Okay, so this is the GIT compiler in you can say in very short. And if you want to read more and want to analyze and check the data uh, with the GIT and without the GIT, then you can dig further on the internet. Okay, so second thing, the second feature is the union type. So the union type basically means in union type we use the more than one type for the property, for the return type. Okay, and for the parameter. So here you can see we can pass the name either integer or in the string value, or we can return from this function fun function either integer or string value. Okay, so here I had echoed, and if you run this we get one here. Okay, if you can see the console, and we can also pass the integer value, and let's just run again, and we still got one. Okay, so this function can accept either integer or string, or return either integer or string. So this is the union type. So whenever you want to use the more than one uh, type of thing for the return type or the parameter or the property type. Okay, so this is the union type. If you the next thing is the null safe operator. Okay, so the null safe operator basically introduced to check the nullability of the object, and if object is not null, then it call the function on this. So before the null safe operator in PHP version, we had to check like this: if object not null, then we call the fun function. Okay, and but in this in the PHP 8 we just use question mark and the function on it, or the property. whatever you want to invoke on this object. Okay, so just adding this, we are good to go. Okay, so if you check this, let's comment it out, and currently object is null, then we will get no result if we run this. Okay, here you can see it's the blank, and if we uncomment this, I'm called, the fun function was called. Okay, so this is a short and significant way to check the nullability of the object and call the operation on this, on that. So this is the null shape operator. The next feature is the named arguments. Okay, so before the PHP 8 we had to remember the position of the argument and number of argument which we need to pass into the function. Okay, ordering as well as the numbers, but in the PHP 8 we can pass the argument by its name, like here I did the name argument pass with the name, so the name of the parameter will be here, and then after colon sign and then the value. Okay, so using this you can change the ordering as well. So if I change the order here, it will still run like this. Okay, and if you have some default parameter like here we have the last name, then you can skip as well. Okay, so this is the name argument in PHP 8. The next thing is the match expression. So the match expression is little bit type of switch statement, but the difference is the switch was the statement and match is the expression. So it returns the value always match, and it matches the strict values. So here we pass the option 2, and it should return the 2. Okay, so let's run it, and we got 2. Okay, and if we pass the string 2, or we have defined the string 2 here, let's suppose, so it would not match at all. If you run this, we got none. Okay, so it go to the directly to the default, and if you haven't declared the defaulter, then you will get an error. So it is a simple type of expression. You can use code in code frequently if you want to match strictly match with a parameter. Okay, so it will be quite useful. Next feature is a constructor property promotion. So in this feature, PHP 8 improved the property initiation for the class. Okay, so in the recent PHP versions, we use this type of declaration. We declare first property name, then in constructor we assign the values in that. Okay, so in property promotion feature in PHP 8, we can combine the declaration and the assignment into one. So here you can see we define the scope of the property and type of the property. Okay, here in the constructor parameters. So You can also check out this in depth from other sources. Here I am only giving you some overview. Okay, so that's it for this feature. Let's move on to the next. The next feature is to get the object, to get the class for the object. Okay, so before the PHP 8 we were using the get class function on the object. Okay, so that we can get the class for the object, for the intended object. But now in PHP 8 we use the double colon class. Okay, so it makes it simple. It's a trivial change, but it is very useful in day-to-day coding. Okay, next thing is the mix type. Mix type, as the name suggested, that if we define the type of the parameter or the return type as a mixed, so we can give the anything, we can pass and return any type of the data. That means, okay, so earlier we have seen the union type, so there you can pass or return the set of data, whatever you have defined using the pipe sign, but in the mixed type you can send and receive any type of data. Okay, so just declare the type of data as mixed. Next feature is the non-capturing caches. It also a trivial change, but as a coding point of view it is good. So earlier we declared the try catch like this. Okay, so here I am doing the division by 0, so that the division by 0 error exception occurred and we catches like this. But sometimes we don't need to this message, and we want some custom matches, custom messages like this. Okay, so we don't need this parameter, but we must define it in earlier PHP version. But in PHP 8 we don't need to do that. If we don't need this variable, then we don't need to define that. It's a trivial change again, but it is very useful in day-to-day coding. Okay. The next one is trailing comma in parameters. So here is a function, so we can define as we declare the parameters in the function, but we trail the comma and at last, as you can see. It's again a trivial changes, but it's a feature now. Okay. The next thing is a stringable interface. So in recent PHP version we can define the toString method in a class, so that object can echo as a string. Okay, so in PHP 8 version it introduced the stringable interface, so that we can use it as a type hinting. Okay, like I did here. Okay, so we can pass the object of stringable type of object. So also whichever class implement the toString method, it automatically get implemented the stringable interface. We don't need to define explicitly, it implicitly define that interface. Okay. The next feature is STR Contains function. So, the STR Contains function works as a STR pose. Okay. So, it takes the string and the string and the searchable string, whatever you want to find that, and it returns the true and false on the basis of the result. Two more function PHP 8 has introduced. The star starts with, star ends with. So, you can find if the string starts with a specific or end with a specific letter or string. Okay. The next one is the FDIF function. So, earlier we have to define the try catch whenever we divide the numbers because of the division by 0 error, but FDIF doesn't throw the exception, but it returns the like infinity INF, okay, or nan. So, you don't need to put the try catch here if you are using FDIF. Okay, it is quite useful. The next one is the resource ID. So, earlier if you want to know the resource ID of any resource, like here I am getting the resource ID of file type object, and if you want to get the resource ID of database type object, then you can then we typecast into int and we get the resource ID. Okay. So, like if I run this, I am getting 5 here, okay, in console, but in PHP 8 we can directly using the get resource ID function, we don't need to typecast this. So, rather we can use this function, and we will have same result. Okay. So, it is also very useful from the coding point of view. The next one is the validation of abstract method in trait. Okay. So, earlier whenever trait defines the abstract method, and whatever class use that trait, then the signature was not strictly validated, okay, in earlier PHP version, but in PHP 8 the signature are strictly followed and validated by this version. So, you can so this feature clearly depict that validation of abstract methods in trait, it got restricted little bit more. Depending on the signature, you have to define that method in class with the same signature. Okay. So, it is a very useful in a day-to-day coding also. The next one is the static return type. So, earlier we don't have the static return type, instead of we are using the self. Okay. So, now PHP 8 has introduced the static return type. So, in different context we can use this whenever we want to return the static, and we need to type in the static. Okay. So, just like a int float, you can define here static. So, the next one is the attribute. So, basically the attribute in PHP 8 used for to attribute the classes, function and properties to add the metadata to class, function and methods. Okay. So, to define these are the classes, okay, and these are the target classes. So attributes are used to add the metadata in PHP 8. This is the good topic to learn, and you can dig out further from different sources. Okay, it has no impact at the runtime of the code, and it adds nothing in the code at the runtime, but you can use it to change your runtime code using the attribute and with the combination of the reflection classes. Okay, so again attribute is a good feature introduced in PHP 8, and we are done. Okay, so we can check this out a little more. Here I am using the reflection classes. So reflection class has the object of the reflection class has a get attributes function. So we can you can get the all the properties of the classes, function, etc. You can dig out further in different sources, so it's very useful. Okay, so that's all friend. We have followed all the features, and if anything I missed, then you can comment it out in the comment box, and if you like, then hit the like button and subscribe my channel. Thank you so much.